left there, he come out of the clouds, and I went back down on him again and got on him and hit him right in the right wing, and he started smoking and went on crashed into the trees. So I don't know whether I killed the pilot. I didn't see a shoot. The 190 I got, the guy bailed out. And the Hinkle 111, I don't know I don't think anybody bailed out of that. I didn't see anybody. I think we'd been escorting, and then if we had a little bit of gas, we might go down and see if we could find up a target of opportunity. And we ran across these guys, about 20 of them. We tangled with them, and we got 15. And one guy chased one guy, but he couldn't catch him. And we were on the deck, working on the deck, and I think we could outfly him on the deck. He couldn't get away from me. I could turn in and keep right with him, and so I just had him going, and he finally decided it's better get out than to get shot down.
Toward the end of the summer of 1943, the P-47C was gradually replaced by the D model. Initially, little distinguished the two versions.
Prior to the fall of 1943, the P-47, including the D version, had really not proven itself to be effective as an escort fighter for the 8th Air Force. And the major problem was that they had this fuel guzzling engine, and it limited their range so that they were unable to provide cover for the bombers into the main targets inside Germany. And this problem really isn't resolved until the P-47 D-15 model arrives in England. And this model has the ability to put wing tanks underneath each of the wings. Each of those wing tanks is 108 gallons. And that gives the P-47 D-15 the extra range it needs to begin to be effective as an escort fighter for the heavy bomber force.
The Thunderbolt now had almost twice the amount of fuel of earlier versions. P-47s soon appeared over Germany, within 150 miles of Berlin, wreaking havoc wherever they went. By the spring of 1944, the Thunderbolt had come into its own as a high-altitude escort fighter. Yet just as it reached its zenith, it was eclipsed by the longer-legged P-51 Mustang. As more P-51 Mustangs flooded into England, the Thunderbolts rapidly disappeared from the 8th Air Force's inventory until only the 56th Fighter Group continued to fly them. The 56th refused to change over. They loved their 47s, especially after new wide-bladed propellers arrived that greatly enhanced the plane's climb rate and acceleration. Also, by this point, Republic started to produce a lightweight, more powerful version of the P-47 that only the 56th Fighter Group used in combat. Designated the P-47M, it was the ultimate Thunderbolt.
There's about 150 of them made, and they all came to the 56th Fighter Group, except maybe a couple generals got. Actually, it was the best propeller plane that was actually in the war. And I think it was clocked at the fast, I think about 470 or 480. I think the 351 is about 460. It was supposed to be and we were the fastest, actually it was the fastest plane that they had.
The P-47M also came with a dramatically increased range thanks to the advent of larger capacity external fuel tanks. This, the ultimate version of the Thunderbolt in Europe, was finally able to stay with the bombers all the way to Berlin and back.
You just cruise back and forth. If you're top cover, you just kind of weave back and forth. Or if you were maybe at the target, you'd go over the target and you just kind of weave back and forth over the target until all the bombers left, and then you'd go back. Usually you'd either have duty of taking them in, you'd pick them up at a certain point, you'd take them to a certain point, then another group would relieve you. And then, because we couldn't stay up there that long, see, the bombers fly, 8, 9, 10-hour mission, and depending how far it is. And then you'd go home, and they would take them so far, and then somebody else would pick them up and bring them home.
Even in the war's waning months, the P-47 proved to be a formidable air-to-air adversary and continued to rack up an impressive toll against the Luftwaffe's best and latest fighters.
My squadron flew one mission where I think they shot down 11 long-nosed F-190s. Eight P-47s shot down 11 long-nosed 190s, didn't lose anybody. But I was on the Riviera on R&R on that mission. So.
By war's end, the 56th Fighter Group had become the top-scoring 8th Air Force unit in air-to-air victories. While the group lost 128 P-47s in combat, its pilots shot down 674 German planes and destroyed another 300 on the ground. With almost 1,000 planes to its credit, the Wolfpack had more than proven that when used right, the P-47 could be a terror to all its foes. Throughout 1944, as its long-range escort role diminished, the 9th Air Force adopted the P-47 for a new role, ground attack. Never designed for low-altitude work, pilots weren't sure how the Thunderbolt would function down on the treetops, shooting up German targets on the ground. Though it didn't perform as well on the deck as it did at 25,000 feet, the P-47 soon more than proved its worth in its new role. In fact, by war's end, it had compiled a record so remarkable that it easily became the best American fighter bomber of the war.
Among its many contributions was as the premier American ground support machine. This was the close air support fighter par excellence in the Normandy campaign. In fact, Saving Private Ryan I thought was an excellent movie, but at the end where the tank busters arrive and save the day, they're P-51 Mustangs. It would have been, I think, more accurate and more representative of what actually happened to have those be P-47 Thunderbolts doing the ground support mission. Because the P-47 was a true ground support star, whereas the P-51, yes, it did those missions, but that wasn't its major contribution.
On the deck, the 47's ruggedness was its greatest asset. Many a Thunderbolt pilot survived a holocaust of flak and machine gun fire thanks to the sheer toughness of his plane's hide.
I was the number 4 pilot, being the youngest, or the newest, I should say, and tooling along, and suddenly the field out in front just lit up like a Christmas tree. I took something in the right wing that blew off every shell I had out there. I had not fired a round at that time, but it had to have been of incendiary nature because there wasn't any ammunition left when it was all over. It blew the gun tray lid on the 4 guns out in the right wing up about that high, and of course holes all over the thing. Headed for home. Decided the damn thing was flying and I would stay with it. Let down then, probably about 20, 30 miles from home, put the wheels down way out, everything worked fine except that the stall speed was all screwed up. Landed, I don't know whether that burned the brakes out or not, I really didn't care. They class 2060 airplane anyway. We didn't have repairs for them, and with that wing the way it was, I guess I was forever thankful that the darn gear went down. But 1,800 rounds, and you could see visible flame in there from whatever hit it, set it off or set the ammunition off, and that was, be real proud, even though he didn't like the 47, having come from 38s, but it absorbed tremendous damage. As far as I was concerned, it was a testimony to the manufacturing talent of the Republic.
The Thunderbolt's powerful engine could drag aloft a dizzying array of